Good morning, and welcome to the November 20th, 2025 meeting of the Knoxville Historic Zoning Commission. This meeting is being broadcast on several television stations, so please remember to speak clearly and directly into the microphones. We'll now have our roll call.
Good morning. For the record, the Knox County Historic Zoning Commission has no business and will not meet today. So for the City of Knoxville, Commissioner Blackburn.
Here.
Commissioner Midas. Commissioner Bradley is excused. Commissioner Kessler.
Here.
Commissioner Hearns is excused. Commissioner Mitchell.
Here.
Commissioner Randazzo.
Here.
Commissioner Tillman.
Here.
And Commissioner Kloss is excused. That's 6 present.
Thank you. We'll now do our swearing in of the speakers. If you wish to speak on an item, please stand now. Raise your right hand and answer "I do" to the following affirmation. I solemnly affirm that the testimony I am about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Thank you. We're asking all speakers to please keep your presentations to 5 minutes. And we also ask speakers to give their name and their addresses as soon as they approach the mic, and there may be something there for you to sign as well. If you wish to appeal on any decision that the Historic Zoning Commission makes today, you may do so within 60 days to Chancery Court after the date of this meeting. We would now do the approval of the minutes of last month's meeting.
Motion to approve.
Seconded.
It's been moved and properly second. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. We will now move to our staff reports.
Right. Before we discuss the level 1 cases, I want to share that staff will be making some changes to the Historic Zoning Commission application process, beginning with the January meeting in 2026. We are reviewing the current cadence of the meeting application deadlines in relation to the meetings, and will likely be proposing to move the deadline back a little to allow more time for review and revision process. Currently, the deadline is 2 weeks, 2 days prior to the meeting, but we post all meeting materials 1 week prior to the meeting. So the current timeline only allows for 1 week for review and revisions. By increasing the deadline, we hope to be able to work through items that are not compliant, which would cut down on the number of conditions attached to the COA. Should also expedite the permitting process. Changing the meeting deadlines will require an amendment to the administrative rules, so you will see this on the December meeting agenda. We're happy to answer any questions y'all may have about this. All right. If we don't have any questions, then I'll move on to the level 1 cases. So since last meeting, we approved an exterior rehabilitation project in Edgewood Park City. They're just doing some in-kind replacement of some doors on the 2nd story and some elements of the front porch. We also, in Edgewood Park City, approved some repair and in-kind replacement of siding and trim, as well as some porch elements. In 4th and Gill, we approved in-kind replacement of porch flooring, and also in-kind replacement of a shingle roof. Also, the installation of drains around a brick foundation and repairs to that foundation. And in Old North, we approved the replacement of an asphalt shingle roof and some repairs to wood siding.
Thank you, Melinda. We will now move to our level 2 certificates of appropriateness. Our first neighborhood would be the Mechanicsville area, and we will look at 1014 McGee Avenue.
All right. Our first case today is for a new 2-story duplex on a 25-foot wide lot in McGee Avenue in Mechanicsville. The shotgun-style duplex has porches on the front and rear elevations that serve as entrances to each unit. I want to note now that what is labeled as the left elevation on the plans is actually the right side of the building if you were looking at it from the front, but I will be using the labels on the plans for this discussion. This case was postponed at the October meeting to allow the applicant to revise the plans, particularly the left-west elevation. The siding-clad faux chimney on the left-west elevation has been removed, and the shed roof massing has been revised to a 2-story projection. The front setback was increased by 4 feet, and Victorian-style decorative brackets were added to the corners of the 2 front porch posts. This is a middle housing project which must follow additional design standards, and a review occurs during permitting. The Commission's review focuses on how the project meets the design guidelines, but some elements of middle housing review may trigger site plan and building elevation revisions that would require additional review by the Commission. The 25-foot wide lot previously featured a single-story, modest folk Victorian-style shotgun house with a width, depth, form, and roofline comparable to the proposed duplex. Its form and proportions are appropriate for the relatively modest housing stock along the block, and the Victorian-style porch brackets and friezeboard contribute detail compatible with the historic architecture. However, as recommended by the guidelines, new construction in the overlay in the last 20 years has been more elaborate in style and detail, including recent new construction on Kanzler Avenue, a block with similar housing stock. The average setback of the block face is 24.5 feet. The adjacent house is the closest to the front lot line along the block face and features a 16-foot setback, with the front porch at 10 feet. It should be noted that there is likely a discrepancy in the lot boundaries and KGIS that resulted in an average front setback calculation that is approximately 5 feet larger than the actual measurements, which can be rectified during permitting. The proposed 19.5-foot front setback with the front porch at 11.5 feet aligns with the block face and is appropriate. You can see the site plan overlaid here for that. The duplex is proposed to be centered between the side lot lines with a 4-foot side setback for both sides of the main body of the house and a 3-foot side setback on the left-west elevation for the 2-story massing. The middle housing standards allow planning staff to administratively approve a variation for the proposed 4-foot side setback during permitting with the support of city engineering. However, the 3-foot side setback on the left elevation would require a variance from the Board of Zoning Appeals or approval from the Historic Zoning Commission. The Commission has the authority to approve alternative dimensional standards that would otherwise require a variance by issuing a COA if the standards are specifically recommended in the design guidelines. The design guidelines for new construction emphasize that the historic development pattern and consistent setbacks of the neighborhood be respected, and they recommend that, quote, side yard setbacks for new buildings shall be consistent with those of existing historic buildings. The shotgun houses along the block face on these 25-foot wide lots do not meet modern setback requirements, with some buildings even touching the side lot lines, and the previous structure on the lot also featured small side setbacks. The left-west lot line is shared with the old Mechanicsville Park, which reduces concern about the effect of a smaller side setback, but makes this elevation highly visible. In the opinion of staff, the 4-foot and 3-foot side setbacks on the right and left elevation respectively are supported by the guidelines. In the opinion of city engineering and zoning, the reduced setbacks would not pose a safety issue, although a higher rated firewall may be required to meet building codes. The Commission should discuss whether it is appropriate to approve the proposed 3-foot side setback for the 2-story massing on the left elevation. Guidelines recommend avoiding new construction that varies in height so that new buildings are equal to the average height of existing buildings. The block features 1-story houses, so the duplex would be the only 2-story building on the block. However, the lot is in clear view of 2-story buildings on Arthur Avenue, and the 2nd story employs a vaulted ceiling to allow for a 5-foot tall floor. Guidelines also recommend that, quote, belt courses or other suggestions of divisions between stories that suggest the beginnings of additional stories shall be used on new construction. The Commission should discuss whether details indicating the separate stories should be introduced. Guidelines recommend, quote, breaking up uninteresting box-like forms into smaller varied massings. The proposed duplex uses front and rear porches, the projecting 2-story shed massing on the left-west elevation, and the recessed entry on the right elevation to break up the long massing. These elements fulfill middle housing requirements, but the Commission should discuss whether they sufficiently break up the massing to meet the design guidelines. The proposed 8-foot deep porch is similar in form to those found on other houses on the block, meets the recommended depth and width, and includes the beadboard ceiling, tongue and groove flooring, and hand railing recommended by the guidelines. Guidelines recommend that porches on new construction, quote, contain design features such as columns and balustrades that introduce architectural diversity. Victorian-style brackets have been added to the corners of 2 of the 3 6x6 square porch posts, which reflect the supports of the historic houses on the block and are characteristic of a folk Victorian style. In the opinion of staff, these brackets should be added on either side of all 3 porch posts. The proposed 12-12 pitch front gable roof clad in asphalt shingles and the parch-coated block foundation align with the design guidelines. Fiber cement lap siding is proposed. The guidelines note that, quote, synthetic siding is inappropriate and not allowed as new siding in new construction, limiting, quote, concrete siding, also called hardy board, allowed on outbuildings and garages for new construction only. The Commission extensively discussed the use of fiber cement siding on new construction in Mechanicsville in May, where wood was required instead, and in July, where wood was required, allowing for fiber cement if staff has, quote, provided official determination of support of the material from the neighborhood organization. The neighborhood representative informs the Commission at the October meeting that the neighborhood met and is supportive of the use of smooth finished fiber cement lap siding, allowing the Commission to discuss appropriate exposure. However, a letter from the neighborhood organization officially documenting their support of the material on new construction has yet to be provided. The Commission expressed that a 4 to 5 inch exposure would be appropriate at the October meeting, but there was some concern about the visual exposure of the material increasing over time. The smallest exposures of fiber cement lap siding tend to be 4 inches and 5 inches. In the opinion of staff, a 4-inch exposure would be the most compatible profile with the historic context, which features wood lap siding with a narrow reveal. But the official determination of support of the material from the neighborhood organization must be provided prior to issuing building permits. The aluminum-clad 1/1 single-hung windows with trim and projecting sills and the quarter light panel doors are appropriate, but final specifications should be sent to staff for review. The Commission should discuss the 3-foot side setback on the left-west elevation, the design elements that break up the massing, and the building's architectural detail. Along with any necessary revisions or conditions, staff is recommending approval of Certificate 10B25HC, subject to the following conditions. The final site plan to meet city engineering standards, meeting all applicable standards of the city zoning code, including Article 4.6 and Article 9.3J, with minor revisions to be approved by staff. The front setback to meet middle housing standards with final approval by staff, allowing for a 4-foot side setback on the right east elevation and a 3-foot exact 2-foot 11.7 inches setback on the left west elevation per the submitted site plan and contingent on meeting building code requirements because they are consistent with those of existing houses and are thus supported by the design guidelines. The decorative brackets to be on either side of all 3 front porch columns with drawings approved by staff. Final window and door selections to be sent to staff for approval, and all siding and trim to be the same material, allowing for smooth finish fiber cement lap siding with a 4-inch exposure with official determination of support of the material from the neighborhood organization provided to staff prior to issuing building permits.
Thank you, Melinda. I see the applicants are present. Is there anything you would like to add to what Melinda has presented to us? Name and addresses first, please.
I'm Jennifer Cooper.
Matthew Baumgartner, 1545 Western Ave.
I don't think we need to add anything.
Okay. Did we get any additional information from the neighborhood?
Not at this time.
Okay. So commissioners, we have information before us. Do you all have any questions for the applicant or any concerns before making a motion?
I would ask the applicant, thank you for coming back again, your patience with the postponement. Did you have any issues with staff recommendation number 5 for decorative brackets or any issues with the setbacks recommendations?
We put the decorative brackets onto the plans, and I do have those, and I think I have 6 of them off the top of my head. We were able to acquire those from another project that was being decommissioned. Okay. So they're actual nice little brackets there, so we will be able to add those to the other columns as recommended.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
From what I can remember about the meeting last time, the neighborhood was wringing its hands a little bit about the approval of a material change, a deviation from the guidelines. This is a deviation that other neighborhoods have done. This is new for this neighborhood, and we had made a specific request on a different project for a letter to be submitted. This isn't something we normally require from neighborhoods. We normally just take them at their testimony here in person. Considering they're not here today to give an opinion, but I think we can take the opinion from last meeting and we can include staff recommendation number 7 and get that approval for the material change. I guess that's just how these kind of...
Well, actually, I was about to say we just received information from the neighborhood. It just came in.
Good timing.
Yeah, 2 minutes ago, she just sent me an email, so I will read this off real quick. So this is from Carly Harrod, the Mechanicsville neighborhood representative. She says, Omni President and I have been working to get to get our thoughts on letterhead, but basically we have serious concerns over the legal implications that were brought up last time. And we're concerned about officially documenting something that says we'd be fined of hardy board if it means we could be sued. We were pretty shocked by that last meeting because it kind of felt like the HCC was slightly pressuring the neighborhood to change our mind by telling us we were the only neighborhood who didn't allow it. So we brought that up with neighbors when polled and think that could have swayed decisions from the last time when most were in favor of wood. But now we have this whole quote, could be legal implications and you could be sued situation. So it feels like we need to reevaluate with that in mind. I can tell you it makes the board incredibly uncomfortable. You are welcome to bring up our concerns at the meeting, but at this point we're uncomfortable submitting an official letter of support without fully understanding the situation. Unfortunately, due to scheduling, no one from Omni can attend in person today.
Madam Chair, will you bring us up to speed on what the legal implications on this are?
I have no idea what she's talking about.
I think if memory serves, I believe what she's mentioning there is the fact that this particular material is not officially in the guidelines as a permitted material. And so the question has arisen a few times with this board. It's now a new material that wasn't really within the scope of the board's consideration in the past. And so what do we do with that now? It's been the case that, we've had some folks express some support for it, but I think the HCC had asked for a letter on official letterhead that said the board has reviewed this in some official capacity, whether at a board meeting or special called, and we've had a vote on it, and we really are okay with this particular material. However, it's still not in the guidelines, right? And so I think that's the legal question that she's struggling with is, do we want to put that on letterhead and say that we're okay with approving it when that's not currently in the guidelines? That's, I think, what the legal question is here.
Okay.
So
She's referring to us in our discussion within saying that their guidelines hadn't been updated in a very long time, but now the board was okay with this material. However, we understood that it would take a long time for them to update the guidelines like it usually does. But we pointed out to her that every other neighborhood has approved this in the past.
Correct, yes.
Okay. So she's just nervous about making the decision on paper. Okay.
And it sounds like she's also concerned if there is a neighbor who does not like this particular material. That seems to be maybe the focus of the concern there about potentially getting sued. So,
Okay.
that makes sense.
What liability or exposure do we have as a commission?
Well, unless the material is specifically prohibited by the guidelines, I think you have the authority to consider anything that's in front of you. Melinda, do you have that section? Where is that here?
Yes, I have it printed.
12.
1 second, let me pull that up. Okay, so it says, quote, the design guidelines say and under the rules for wood wall covering say, synthetic siding is inappropriate and is not allowed either as replacement siding on existing buildings or siding in new construction. It says also concrete siding, also called hardy board, is allowed on outbuildings and garages for new construction only. The material can be used like board and batten if placed vertically, and then there's something about if used like normal siding, it must have a reveal of no more than 4.25 inches. So those are the exact language of the design guidelines. Other neighborhoods have that same line about synthetic siding being inappropriate. That's, I think, pretty much the exact same verbiage that's used in the other neighborhoods, but they don't have the specification about what concrete siding is allowed on. So that is one difference. However, there are similar situations where the design guidelines are pretty specific about something that then the commission, through precedent and working with the neighborhood, has established a different standard for. For example, windows with true divided lights. A lot of the neighborhoods guidelines were written in the early 90s, and it's not as easy to get windows with true divided lights now. And so having simulated divided lights has been okay, but that's an example of a similar situation where there is specific language that the commission has established a precedent to do something different.
To be clear too, I don't think that the first thing that would happen would be that there would be a lawsuit, but if someone appealed the decision, that would go to Chancellery Court. So then a judge would review it, likely before there were any kind of lawsuits, if that were to happen. happen.
Yeah, there's a process in place for any disagreements of decisions that are made.
As I understand it, it would be an appeal to Chancery Court of the decision itself, but I guess anything is possible in the legal world. I'm not our lawyer. We have an expert here that I try to rely on. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going to just shoot from the hip here. But we have people from neighborhoods, members of the public, give their opinions all the time. They're allowed to contradict the guidelines in any way that they feel in their freedom of speech. They aren't legally liable. I mean, they could personally be sued, but it's unlikely and probably unsubstantial that neighborhoods can give opinions without fear of prosecution or persecution.
So, I mean, a lot of that is exactly right. So, anybody can be sued for anything at any time. Whether or not it's successful is another story. So, yeah, I mean, it is true. We have neighborhood representatives who come in and they say, yes, we agree with this, or yes, we agree with 90%, but here's whatever we would change. And it might not perfectly line up with the guidelines. And that's what this board is here to do. So.
Were there any recent applications in this neighborhood where we did not allow for any kind of synthetic siding and allowed for only wood?
Yes, and I think that's what made their neighborhood board meet and start having a discussion about it, because I think they just did the black and white letter law of what the guidelines said before with the other.
But prior to this one, has there been one recently?
Yes.
Oh, there
And
has.
so that's what prompted the discussion with the neighborhood for them to have a change of opinion.
Before you joined, we had another application in the neighborhood, also new construction. I think it was the same architect, at least it was the same firm, and the neighborhood was against it. And they spoke against it, and I think we did actually leave the caveat of a letter, and that's where like the write a letter began. And then the neighborhood met again, and they discussed the potential of fiber cement siding specifically in new construction homes, and they looked at other guidelines in other neighborhoods where it's allowed. And if I recall correctly, their reasoning for approving it was the sheer low volume of new construction possibilities, just the amount of empty lots. I think they counted, half dozen, and they said, these may not be developed otherwise. Fiber cement can work for 5 or 6 houses, and they were like, let's go for it.
Yeah, there was a case that came to the commission in May. There were 2 projects on Chancellor Avenue that were very similar. One came in May where wood was required, and then another came through in July, and wood was required, but allowing for fiber cement if, quote, official determination of support of the material is provided from the neighborhood organization. So and at the last meeting, again, the neighborhood representative came and said, hey, we met, we're okay with this, but staff reached out to the neighborhood and at the advice of our legal team and just said, hey, we'll just need a more official letter for this. And so that's why the condition here is just to still wait on that letter, but to follow what they shared at last meeting.
So one was for wood. The second one is, they said, fiber.
The second one was
okay.
wood, but allowing for fiber cement if official determination of support of the material was provided from the neighborhood organization.
And they did provide that?
So they haven't yet provided an official letter, and that is what the neighborhood representative was saying they are just afraid of because of legal implications for something more official. She sent me an email last meeting saying they'd met and this is what they decided. And at the meeting last month, she came and, elaborated further on that and said, similar to what Commissioner Tillman just said.
So this is the third application?
Yes, this is the third application this year for new construction in Mechanicsville where this discussion's been had.
Okay, thank you.
And I think part of their neighborhood committee's concern is there's several lots that are bladed and we'll have new bills, and so this would probably just keep coming up, which is why they had the discussion of allowing it. Mm-hmm. So where do we go from here?
From here, I feel comfortable supporting staff recommendation number 7 to allow for smooth finish fiber cement siding. And I guess a letter probably should be necessary considering the neighborhood rep isn't here today and they are a little worried about the legal implications. I would hope that this body would be sued. I think we're a little more capable than a regular individual of handling this kind of issue in Chancery Court, but
So are you saying that you would be in support of it, including the official determination?
yes.
Okay. I would be in support of it without the official determination.
I could be. I mean, again, we don't require that of other neighborhoods,
Right,
but
exactly.
I wasn't around when we deviated from guidelines in Old North and started doing it as a regular habit for specific things in a consistent manner. Maybe letters were required for the first 3 cases. I don't know.
I do feel like there's sufficient conversation and documentation in our meetings here that make me feel comfortable understanding the neighborhood's position. But if we put it back on them, they might not ever feel comfortable. And then we're really affecting our ability to build new housing.
Yeah, and I think that you said something important, that we do have the ability to respond if someone has an issue with it. And so I don't want to put the onus on them when we have the power to make a position and decision here.
I'm going to change the subject if that's all on that.
No, it's not all right. No, just kidding. Yes, go ahead.
Let's look at the setback that the staff has directed us to. Just want to make sure that we're good with that. Will you go back to the recommendation, please? Any context with that, Melinda?
Context for
For changing the setbacks,
the side setback or the specifically?
yeah.
Yeah, so section 8.5C of the zoning code allows the Historic Zoning Commission to use alternative dimensional standards if they are specifically recommended by the design guidelines. The design guidelines do speak to side setbacks. One second, let me find where I have this written down. The design guidelines for new construction emphasize that the historic development pattern and consistent setbacks of the neighborhood be respected, and they recommend that, quote, side yard setbacks for new buildings shall be consistent with those of existing historic buildings. So as you can see here, the historic buildings here are not meeting the 5-foot setback requirements. You can see that on this old Sanborn as well. And so in the opinion of staff, the design guidelines do specifically speak to this, and the historic context of the block speaks to this as well. The spacing between these buildings is very small, like 3 foot between these two. And so having that spacing would be consistent with the block, and the side that'll have the smaller side setback is touching the old Mechanicsville Park. So there's less concern about neighbors there. Again, as I mentioned, this is a middle housing project, and so 4-foot side setbacks could be approved during permitting by planning staff with the support of engineering if the commission was uncomfortable with approving those setbacks. There was discussion at the last meeting, though, that this 3-foot side setback would be necessary to make this massing a 2-story projection. Previously, it was flush with the building, and there was a faux chimney here that the commission requested be removed. They've removed that and made this massing. There was some discussion last meeting about what had to be done to meet middle housing standards. This will meet middle housing standards, and so it's just up to y'all. Is this side setback appropriate? And is this, sufficiently breaking up this elevation to meet the recommendations of the design guidelines?
Okay, so we're not setting a precedent here. We're just being consistent with other things in the neighborhood.
Yes, that's correct. It's not setting a precedent. This is applied on a case-by-case basis. Other streets may not have the same historic side setback pattern. They're not all a row of shotgun houses.
Okay. Does the applicant have any issues with the staff recommendations? Are you okay with all of those? You accept them?
Yeah, we're fine with them.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to approve based on staff recommendations. Are there any amendments to that?
Was there a question about whether we need to define the first and the second floor on the exterior of the
Yeah, so the design guidelines do recommend that belt courses be used to divide stories. And so I just mentioned that that was something y'all could discuss if it was necessary. While this building is 2 stories, the second floor is not as tall. If you see right here, you can see that dividing line where the second floor starts. They use a vaulted ceiling, so it's only about 5 feet from there. So that's why it was 9 for discussion as opposed to a specific recommendation.
I don't think we need to impose a belt course here. That doesn't quite seem necessary. I'm also fine with the projecting shed. I think it breaks up the massing sufficiently. I'm fine with the setback recommendations given my concerns about safety were resolved. And the last one, we discussed the letter. I'm fine having the letter or not, honestly, whichever way y'all prefer.
I really appreciate that this design added functionality while taking away the fake functionality of the chimney or whatever it was. I think that this is a really good solution.
Commissioner Blackburn, so you're saying that you are considering making a motion based on staff recommendation? Okay, and is that motion including having the condition of number 7 with a formal written notification from the neighborhood?
I'm with Commissioner Tillman. Whatever the other commissioner members think, I'm fine with either way.
We would request that the letter be, that we don't need the letter from the neighborhood.
Okay, so you're saying that you would like for there not to be?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Commissioners, can we all opine on this?
I'm worried that, the neighborhood organization is worried about being sued. They're worried about creating the letter. I feel like we've had a very thorough and inclusive and good faith discussion about the material in question. And I don't think the letter is necessary. I feel like we've all shared our opinions, and this is probably the best way to make the neighborhood organization feel comfortable moving forward without a letter.
I agree, and I think Commissioner Randazzo kind of made that point earlier about our record keeping and note taking and discussion. So, Madam Chair, I agree with Commissioner Tillman.
So since you put a motion there, do you want to edit your motion?
Well, the staff recommendation doesn't require the letter, so.
Yeah,
oh,
it
it
does.
does. Oh, okay. Well, then, yes, I'll amend that to delete the requirement for the neighborhood letter, please.
I'll second.
Delete it. So it's been moved and properly second that we approve based on staff recommendation with the deletion of the second part of 7 requiring an official determination from the neighborhood.
Correct.
Do we want to take a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Congratulations. Mhm. We will now move to our second case in Mechanicsville, 218 Chancellor Avenue.
All right. This next case is for revisions to a rehabilitation project on Chancellor Avenue. The applicant is requesting to fully deconstruct and rebuild the building following the previously approved plans. They are also requesting to use vinyl-clad wood windows instead of wood windows. Prior to recent work, the house demonstrated extensive deferred maintenance and non-historic modifications. An after-the-fact COA was issued for exterior rehabilitation scopes in April 2024, which required that the recently installed vinyl windows be removed and replaced with wood windows. The property changed ownership, and the house sat vacant for months without siding, further deteriorating. A rear addition and further exterior rehabilitation scopes were approved in March 2025 with the condition that, quote, final window specifications be submitted to staff for review. Vinyl replacement windows have frequently been denied in Mechanicsville, and vinyl-clad wood replacement windows were denied in 2012. Only wood replacement windows have been approved, except for a 2014 case in which aluminum-clad wood windows were approved to replace deteriorated wood windows on a brick commercial building within the overlay. Aluminum-clad wood windows have been approved for new construction in outbuildings. The proposed 1/1 double-hung vinyl-clad wood windows, do not meet the guidelines, which state that, quote, replacement windows must be the same materials as the original windows, which are generally wood. In the opinion of staff, aluminum clad wood can be appropriate for replacement windows because so little of the original materials on the house are extant, and the house has had vinyl windows since at least 2007. According to the project's contractor, the damaged structure is currently a safety hazard that puts workers at risk, and pictures documenting water and termite damage were provided. The guidelines state that, quote, demolition of any original feature or part of a historic building should be avoided, and that, quote, demolition of any building which contributes to the historic or architectural significance of the old Mechanicsville neighborhood should not occur unless public health and safety require the removal of the building or structure. In the opinion of staff, the documentation demonstrates that the structure is a safety hazard, and deconstruction and reconstruction following the plans approved with 11D 24HC is appropriate. However, no mechanical demolition to include the use of excavators, wrecking balls, bulldozers should be undertaken, but mechanical equipment can still be used to disassemble the structure. Every effort should be made to reuse any salvageable historic materials, in particular the timbers that frame the roof. Any other deviations from 11D 24HC will require additional review by the Commission. Staff is recommending approval of Certificate 11H 25HC subject to the following conditions: denial of the proposed vinyl-clad wood windows, approval of 1/1 double-hung wood or aluminum-clad wood windows with final specifications to be approved by staff, no mechanical demolition be undertaken, but allowing for the use of mechanical equipment to disassemble the building, and any salvageable materials be identified during reconstruction and reused, particularly the timbers that frame the roof.
Thank you, Melinda. I see the applicant is present. Would you please give us your name and address?
Yep, my name is Corey King. I live at 9408 Kimborough Drive.
Would you like to add anything or make any comments based on what's been?
Yeah, just, based on my comments, I was here back before everybody, back at the beginning of the year as we were going to start to undertake. And so in essence, where we're at is the exterior elevations, setbacks, everything's already been previously approved. It's more or less just how do I get to the end result? At the time, we weren't aware as to how bad the condition was of the home until we started to pull down drywall, etc. And then we realized all of this is totally just gone. And it would be at this point extremely cost prohibitive to try to more or less rebuild this from the inside out, temporary walls and whatnot to try to keep the original, structure. I would argue there's really nothing here to really salvage at this point. I could try to take one of those roof rafters and turn it into a handrail or something, but I don't know what structural viability much really has there, or I would say historical significance. And so I guess what I'm saying is the end result doesn't change, just how I get there is what we're proposing here.
Okay. Did we get any information from the neighborhood?
I don't believe so.
Okay. So commissioners, do you all have any questions for the applicant?
Yes. Thank you for providing all these photos. I can't learn everything from photos, so I wanted to ask you specifically, I'm going to ask you parts of the building and what the issues are. How is the roof, just to start?
Leaks like a boat full of holes, and I really don't know quite much what's holding this house together at this point.
Do the rafters seem like they're in decent condition?
They're 100 and something years old and have been exposed to weather and elements for years at this point. I couldn't speak to the structural integrity of them.
Okay. What about the walls and the wall studs? Some of those look pretty new. All new that could have been 2 years old and exposed to weather. But.
Sure. So again, the whole home's been just open to the elements. I don't know really much of what really is salvageable. So I bought this home. I bought this home back at the beginning of the year, and the previous owner had done a bunch of just unpermitted work, and that contractor was just flying under the radar, and they put this home together. I could share, I thought they were in this folder, what it looked like when I bought it, which was deceptive, like in nature. You walked in, there was just nice LVP flooring and sheetrock, and all that contractor did was just attach all that to rotted wood, or they would have attached some new 2x4s inside and then just screwed it to that and moved on with their way.
What this looks like, seen this in older shotgun style homes, is the house was put on lifts, it was jacked up a few inches, and a new footer was dug, a new stem wall was put in, and I see new platform framing. Again, that could be 2 years old and exposed to the elements and not being...
We did all of that foundation work just
Okay.
in the last couple months is when we had that done. I brought my GC and my architect here as
Okay.
well. That was done as we knew we had to do that. We weren't in the position at the time or looking at it as like, hey, we're going to have to disassemble this or go that route. It was just as we lifted this, rebuilt like a whole new foundation under it, and then we start to go do the framing elements. That was when we realized like, oh, the cost is going to be extremely prohibitive, 3-4x what it would cost me just to reframe this house in the same, like I'm not changing the footprint, I'm not changing anything. All of that's been previously approved. So it's just the end result is the same as what's been brought here before. It's just how I get there construction wise is what we're proposing.
Sure. So you're planning on retaining that CMU stem wall?
Yeah, I don't think we're
Okay.
changing anything from like a
Okay.
foundation standpoint. Yeah,
When we're talking about demolishing things, just want to see where our delineation is.
Sure.
Yeah, you've got a band board here. I had a fun discussion with the permitting office about attaching to band boards that don't exist in full and framed homes a few weeks ago. Are you keeping the band board in that section, or are we redoing
I
all
have
wood
to
framing?
defer- I've got my general contractor.
Okay.
Allie Chamberlain, 1501 Granger Avenue. What I was going to say back on the conversation of framing is all the old lumber was there. I mean, has been there, but it's all balloon framed, but nothing's attached at the bottom, which is why we had to add a lot of the lumber around the foundation just to be able to jack up the house. So that's all new for the most part. And then the newer framing that you see, when Corey purchased it, some contractor, somebody came in here and clad all of this. There's brand new drywall, brand new flooring, everything. We just ripped it off. So everything that's exposed, that's newer looking framing, is something that they did, but it's so out of level that the ceilings look like this. So I just wanted to contribute back to the framing conversation so you have the context on that. So all that is what the previous contractor had done that we've just uncovered. Can you repeat the next question that you had?
Yeah, I wanted to know if you were going to retain the band board and floor joist and studs that we can see that look a little newer, or is that part of the,
So the two worst parts of the framing of this is the termite damage in the old lumber is so bad that you can take the walls and do this to them, and they're not actually attached to anything, which is why the guys who did the foundation added a little bit of lumber just to be able to lift up the house to build the footers and walls. And then the newer framing from the previous contractor, which is kind of the stuff that you see there where it looks like it's a few years old, but it's been aged by weather, it's not worse than the old lumber, but it's nothing that they have done is straight. It's not done properly. It's not holding anything up. It's not attaching. Like, it's on the subfloor and it's not actually tying into anything. So none of it is right. And everything is out of level. So the plans really, in order for this to be structurally sound, the original plan based on what had been approved was to disassemble one wall at a time and rebuild it properly, which is the exact same thing as new construction, but just doing it one piece at a time, which is a lot more dangerous and cost prohibitive. So the goal is not to save any of the framing that the previous contractor did because it's all wrong. If we can save, I mean, the timbers in the roof are the strongest. The wall framing is not strong at all. It has termite damage really badly. That's newer lumber that also has termite damage, which will not be saved. So the strongest component of this house that remains is the timbers in the roof. However, nothing's level, so the whole roof is really wavy, which has caused
the whole back of the roof is falling in. So any way that we can save those, if you guys have recommendations of how they can be repurposed or a way that still provides suitable housing, even if they're not visible, I think we'd be open to understanding how you see those being reused in the house.
We have a project coming up later in this meeting where we approved a demolition, and it was a similar issue. I mean, it was a very different building, and it was much larger and much more of a public hazard. But a lot of the rafters were in good condition, and the walls weren't, which meant you had the overhead hazard of something falling on you while working on it. And I think that's what this issue was. When I started asking the questions, I figured the walls had termite damage, the roof was leaky, but the structure was there, but heavy and difficult to work under, or at least hazardous to work under.
Yeah.
But I was just trying to get a delineation point of, we're keeping the CMU foundation and we're new framing on top of it. Okay.
So like Corey mentioned earlier, that was the first step in following the initial approval process.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole house was lifted up, and that was all just added. So, I mean, anything we can keep, that's the safest thing to keep.
Well, I was wondering, you had a previous contractor on this. I didn't know if those footers were approved or
No, there was
inspected
nothing. All of this was floating on nothing.
Okay.
So we built that to try to hold up the house.
Okay.
And yeah, that was step one.
I had another question about a recommendation. It's no mechanical demolition, excavators, bulldozers, wrecking balls should be undertaken, but mechanical equipment can still be used to disassemble the structure. I really don't understand this recommendation. I was hoping staff could illuminate us here, because I don't really know what we're asking the applicant to do here. If the roof is a hazard of falling on workers beneath it, I think heavy equipment is the only way to take it down safely. I've done projects where we've attached a stud, 12-inch sun center to every rafter, and we just give them all, a dozen legs. I'm not telling you that's what you need to do here. I'm not your architect. But I feel like if I were to take this building down, just looking at the photos, I'm going to use a bulldozer for human safety.
Yeah, so that staff recommendation was just trying to avoid more explicit, complete demolition of the building and the, inability to salvage any of those historic materials that were left, but that would still allow for, say, lifting the roof off the structure. But if the commission has specifics about that or is all right with the use of those materials, that was, again, just added to avoid more explicit demolition. This wasn't reviewed as a demolition case exactly.
I'm picturing a track hoe with a thumb to lift to be able to retain your foundation, but that would be something that it's not an actual clean scrape, which I think is what the guidelines are intending to prevent, and maintaining the footprint, which is easier for y'all anyway.
Corey, I'm very sorry that you opened up the walls and got into this mess. I appreciate you taking the project on. I think what you're proposing is maybe a good plan, but for our process, it looks like we're looking at reviewing demolition and then reviewing an infill housing design. And the question is, maybe we could skip those steps if we feel comfortable with this as an infill design. But I feel a little uncomfortable starting to define what is demolition. If we take one piece of wood out at a time, is it eventually demolition? And I don't know, unless if law can define that, how else we handle that.
The only case that I can think of that is brought to my attention is one where we literally had in the Fort Sanders neighborhood a home that was basically brought down to, in layman's terms, a roof with toothpicks to preserve the setbacks, if I remember correctly, in the grandfathered in status. In that case, my opinion was that when you could see daylight and no walls, that there had been demolition. This case, of course, is more subtle than that, especially given the extensive damage that is here. Mark, is there a definition of that in building code, perhaps? We might need just a minute on that and report back.
that what you were trying to get at, Melinda, with no mechanical demolition?
Yes, that's what we were trying to get at. And again, when we reviewed this case as a revision case, not as a demolition case, that would have had different fees. And that was done since they were using the same footprint that had already come through the board, and also because originally there was just some discussion about just using different windows.
While law's reviewing, unless if anyone wants to continue on this topic, we could maybe discuss windows. Is that okay?
I had a little bit more, sorry, I know I've talked a lot, on just the demolition aspect, and then we can move to windows. I feel comfortable with, I don't know if we can change this to a demolition application, but I feel comfortable in principle with a mechanical but managed demolition, retaining the foundation for human safety. But I would feel a lot better about it if we had, and maybe staff has this, very detailed drawings with as-built measurements. You know, like anything you're taking down that you can't look again, like what is the exact soffit dimension everywhere, just so we know that you're taking the steps of, hey, we're going to rebuild exactly as it was. Sure, we can follow that CMU outline and get pretty close, but when we're doing something like this, I think it is worth it to take that extra step and make sure we get and run a tape on every part of this building. And I think it supports your application for an actual demolition, which again, if this is a revision application or not, that's kind of outside of my wheelhouse.
Just, Lisa, if I may, one thing in relation to this. On number 4, identifying salvageable historic materials, who does that fall upon? Does that fall upon the applicant or inspection, or how? And this kind of goes along with what Commissioner Tillman's saying about how they purposefully demoed this. Who would be responsible for number 4?
So that's something that staff would look at. We would probably just request that they tell us what materials they're salvaging, send pictures of that, explain why they couldn't salvage certain things.
Are you okay with that?
I mean, I'm open to it. I don't know, like I said, how much is really salvageable, but
Right.
I guess do what I can, right? It's like I can take whatever the strongest rafters and either use it or turn it into something. I jokingly said a handrail, but I mean, that's just...
Yeah. Well, I don't want it to be cumbersome. Just as you're going through the process, you see something, you set it aside, and you just make an inventory of it. But I would like to commend you for coming before this commission on this project, because we've seen more than our fair share where they come after the fact. So thank you very much for including us in the process.
Some of those rafters may be salvageable, not as a rafter, but in repurposing, they're probably a 2x4. They're not going to meet current code, but they may be petrified and really strong. We had some materials like that from my project. I think we repurposed them as a countertop in a restaurant space. Like, it's a valuable material to be donated, if nothing else. You probably can't use it in your own framing because the dimensions won't match, but...
It also, yeah, I think we can definitely save them and use them in ways that kind of honor the history of the house without reusing them as rafters or as ceiling joists, just because they are round and it's really, I mean, it adds a different challenge, but.
Okay, so just briefly on the category of demolition. So there's nothing in our building code or zoning code that specifically defines that. So in this case, where this is a much more subtle fact pattern here, we would need our zoning administrator to weigh in on whether this is full demolition or not. That's not a call that, you know, he's not here today that, you know, we can make that decision. But I did want to say, staff and I were just talking about, you know, the conversion to a demolition permit and some notice issues. So one thing that we do have to be mindful of in terms of due process is that we have advertised this as, I believe, revisions, not as demolition. So that's a potential issue for, you know, neighborhoods to get notice of that and be able to come out and respond to issues. So I think, you know, I'll let staff comment on this, but I think what would probably be most appropriate is for us to do another notice to specifically note demolition in there if that's what the zoning administrator determines that this is a demolition. And then at that point, staff could handle whatever issues were outstanding as far as paperwork and application fees.
Yeah, I think Christina covered it pretty well there. I don't have anything to add.
So what do you want to talk about windows first before we just make a decision on which direction to go in?
Yeah, what I have to say on windows is brief. I did want to point out, though, sometimes houses get demolished by themselves, and if that were to happen, it would still come under this review. So if the integrity of it was so poor, then we would be reviewing demolition after the fact. So that process is standard. A note on the windows, there is the Historic Preservation and Facade Improvement Grant Program application that does gap funding. So if you can provide specs to the city, and if you have time in the next couple of months to do this, you can say, here's how much the vinyl window I want to buy costs. Here's how much the window that the historic guidelines want me to buy is, and they have gap funding for that. There may be some needs-based qualifications. There are businesses that have used this, but that's what I would recommend. As far as I know, we've not gone against the guidelines with the windows. I don't know if anyone else has comments on that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for pointing that out. Did you all have any questions about that or anything that we've been discussing?
I had a quick question about the windows. So if, first of all, what is approved right now is full wood replacement windows for the guidelines. Is the only instance where aluminum clad windows have been approved in 2014?
So aluminum clad wood windows were approved as replacements on an existing building only once in 2014. However, they have been approved on new construction and on outbuildings. They were just approved on the new construction case we heard before this.
Did you have another comment based on your visit?
Just that it sounds like they may have already been approved for a project on Chancellor.
Yes, that's correct. They were approved on the new construction there.
The most difficult thing is finding the appropriate dimensions, because once you start using vinyl windows, it's hard to fit that window into the holes that are historic. But usually aluminum clad wood will meet the same as wood.
Yeah, we've been looking more into the aluminum clad windows. I talked with someone for a while about just different options and things that have been approved. The one question that I would have is, if we do, I guess more in terms of process, if we do end up basically demolishing the majority of this structure outside the foundation and saving the rafters and what are being used as the ceiling joists, how does that get defined with you all in terms of a revision versus a demolition and new construction? Because at this point, it's almost acting like demolition and new construction, but it's already been through a lot of revisions. So this, I guess, that could create a blurry line with windows, for example, and with a lot of other materials that we end up coming across.
I don't know if this is the way the planning department calls it, but this looks like a reconstruction project to me, which is a different animal and closer to a renovation. I fear, just based on the application status, that this is going to be postponed, and I wanted to mention it before I forgot. If this is a real human safety issue and people could get in, I would advise securing the site, whatever that means, whether that's a temporary fence, rental companies can come and install those really quickly. Plywood on the studs, whatever it is. Anyway, just my 2 cents, but I think they're still discussing the application status.
Well, I think that we have exhausted as much as we can do today. I was going to talk to the board to see if someone wanted to make a motion that we postponed, and then give you guys a chance to revise, not submit a new application, but maybe revise, and you can maybe work with staff on what that looks like to make sure we can fit everything that's needed to be done. So but I can't make the motion. So.
I guess I would ask the question, if we postpone the current application as a revision, we're going to see the revision again, and is that what we want to see? Can they change it between meetings from a revision to a demolition? Or do we deny a revision and invite them to create a demolition application?
So we would want to have some conversation with Peter Ahrens, the building official, about this to see if they would require a demolition permit for this work. And if it was considered that, then staff would most likely just revise this case type to a demolition case, and then would have them pay the additional $400 to cover that fee. So that's if that's what Peter determines. The opinion of staff when we were taking the application in is that the actual plans that they're wanting to do had been reviewed, and they had shared that they intended to keep the foundation, and I believe that central stem wall, and so that was enough of the building there. And if they're using materials, it's a little bit more of reconstruction. So that was the staff opinion going in, but without Peter here to weigh in on whether or not that would be required, I'm just not sure at this time if that change would have to be made. I will say a sign was put on the property. We emailed everything out to the neighborhood group. Everything was posted on the website as it typically is, even if it was marked as revisions. Everybody had access to the plans, and we didn't get any comment from the neighborhood. So even if the public notice and the agenda said revisions, the plans and everything made it clear what they were requesting.
With that, I can move us along and make a motion to postpone. Just real quick, did the applicant have any other questions for this body before we move on? I'm sorry we can't give you the certain answers you want. I'm disappointed as well, but I feel we do need to dot our I's and so forth.
Yeah, I guess I just don't know. I don't know what my next step is. Do I just wait to hear back? Do I need to resubmit? I'm sorry, this is just soup. This has already just gone on for almost a year that I've owned this. There's just continual carrying costs. It just gets to be cost prohibitive. And I was hoping to be able to move forward so we could just actually start putting this back together. It's been a blight on the neighborhood forever. It's not safe for people walking around. We have secured up the place, but I can't stop people. It's not that hard to get into there. The thing's full of holes in general. I just have concerns. As the weather starts to come in, we get a snowfall, that roof comes down. It's just to do nothing is costing me close to $3,000 a month. And so I'm just now facing this. Well, we don't know what your next step is, Corey, but go ahead and just continue burning your cash.
I apologize for that. I know that's burdensome. We take demolition of buildings seriously, and that's not to say that other people don't or you don't, but we try to take extra precautions and notice it and advertise it accurately. If we're looking at demolishing a building, we're talking about months in the context of decades for these houses, and I think it is worth taking an extra month in order to properly evaluate a demolition of a possibly 100-year-old home.
I've been in a similar position, and I know it's not great at all. But as a business owner, you might be in the space where you need to decide, if postponing costs you more money, it might be worth spending the money to put in temporary support. So we wouldn't be stopping you from moving forward with plans as is. But if we need to do a demolition, then there's nothing we can do about that.
I think we've all just agreed, though, that it's a safety hazard, and there's just liability that I'm under now for this that's just carrying on. It just becomes...
For clarification purposes on demolition for the commission, if a structure is deemed dangerous by codes enforcement, it can be demolished without it coming before your review. We have a case later on the agenda for new construction that was on a property in Fort Sanders where that is what happened. It was got all burned, and it was demolished, and it never came before the board. So I just want to provide that for context.
And I suspect that, the determination can come pretty quick on whether or not this is considered a demolition, and then next month we have no problem coming back with knowing exactly what the commission is reviewing.
With that, I'll make a motion to postpone.
Second?
It's been moved and properly second to postpone to next month, 30 days. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We'll move to our next case in Edgewood, 2100 Washington Avenue.
All right, so this case is for revisions to a new primary structure on Washington Avenue that was approved in April 2025. The quarter light paneled front door was revised to a 3/4 light, 1-panel mahogany front door, and the secondary entrance of the rear elevation was revised from a quarter light paneled door to an aluminum clad wood full light French doors. Minor changes were also made to the driveway and parking pad placement and materials. The revisions to the driveway location and parking materials reduce the size and visibility of the driveway and meet the guidelines. The new proposed 3/4 light, 1-panel mahogany front door and aluminum clad wood, full light French double doors for the secondary entrance align with the design guideline recommendations for materials and design. The faux rafter tails are no longer depicted on the plans, but they are mentioned in the note on the plans. The faux rafter tails should be retained. Siding specifications should be sent to staff for review to fulfill condition 2 of the previous COA. And with that, staff is recommending approval of Certificate 11K25HC, subject to the following conditions. Final siding selections be sent to staff for approval, meeting all applicable requirements of the city zoning ordinance and city engineering standards, and the faux rafter tails be retained.
Thank you, Melinda. Could you please give your name and address?
Yes, Matt Foster, 2525 Jefferson Avenue.
Okay, do you have any comments of the staff's recommendation?
Yes, we did call out the faux rafter tails. When we submitted initially to the city, it wasn't, I guess I didn't have the layer turned on. So we have to respond to the permit comments, and so the next revision will show the rafter tails. The eave overhang, I think another change I need to make, it was listed at 18 inches. It needs to be changed to 24 inches. So we'd have a 24-inch eave overhang. The faux rafter tails, I just received word from my contractor to confirm the siding selections. So that will be included in the revisions as well. The main body of the house will have poplar siding, poplar beveled siding, 5-inch exposure, sold from Witt, and the fish scale shingles will be from Cedar Valley handmade shingles. Two other things I probably need to bring up in response to comments from the permit side. On the east elevation, I will be adding an access door to sort of the, I guess, on the top, the bottom, on the right side under the porch. I need to add a 20 by 24 access door there. The window next to the left of the garage door is currently a casement egress sized. It might be changing to a door. There's still discussion on that, but if it does change to a door, it would match the door to the apartment right there. I think those are all of the things I wanted to kind of update you guys on.
Okay, thank
Let me know
you.
if you have any questions.
Do we have any comments from the neighborhood?
No, we did not.
Commissioners, do you have questions for the applicant?
Matt, I think when you brought this design forward, the neighborhood had not yet approved cement fiber siding. But are you wanting to do wood siding regardless? Were you aware of
Regardless,
that?
yeah,
Okay.
wood siding.
Beautiful.
From our previous discussion, the porch we had requested to be concrete porch, the front porch, that was the main deviation that we were asking for.
Are there any other questions or comments from commissioners?
No, I feel comfortable approving this application. I wish our previous applicants hadn't just left, because the previous cases for this address were a good example of the due diligence of a demolition of a historic building. And again, applaud you for taking this on. And with that, I'll make a motion to approve per staff recommendations.
It's been moved. Go ahead.
Before we vote, I just want to say, just to prevent them from having to come back to the commission later, if y'all do not have a problem with them changing this window to a door at a later date, it would be helpful to just add that as a condition to allow staff to approve that. The other changes that he mentioned would already be something I could say were okay. That's all.
I can amend my motion to add a fourth condition that that specific window that was just shown be converted to a door and approved by staff.
Thank you.
The motion was amended. Do you want? Okay. So the new amended motion has been properly second. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
We're going to move to Old North Knox. We have one property there at 225 East Oklahoma Avenue.
Right. This case is for an after-the-fact review of a new secondary structure. A shed was approved on the property last month, and it was identified during permitting that this carport was built without a permit or a COA sometime in 2024. The carport is placed at the rear of the lot and is accessed via the alley, and it is made from thick pine posts with brackets and a flat metal roof. The carport is not visible at all from the right-of-way and is screened by a fence. The placement at the rear of the lot is appropriate, and it is compatible in scale with the primary structure. Carports with wood posts and metal roofs have been approved in Old North Knoxville, and the design benefits from the brackets, thick posts, and minimal visibility of the roof. So with that, staff is recommending approval of Certificate 11925HC as submitted.
Thank you. I think the applicant is on Zoom, maybe?
Mm-hmm.
Hello.
Hello, my name is Fatima Al-Azhari at 2701 Eugenia Avenue, Nashville, Tennessee, 37211.
Okay.
I have nothing to add.
Okay, thank you. I think we have the neighborhood rep also on Zoom. Would you like to make a comment?
Yes, Sean Boland, 115 East Scott Avenue, representing Old North Knoxville. So carports are not allowed per our guidelines, and I'm unaware of any carport that's been approved. When approaching the board, we all agree that we would never have supported this to begin with. That being said, it is not visible from the public right-of-way at all. We are hesitant to support anything that deviates from our guidelines, especially when they can be perceived as precedent setting. So we do not support this application, but we are hesitant to recommend or request its removal. And I'm happy to answer any of your questions because I was somewhat vague there.
Question for you, Sean. Are the footers of the carport actually going into the concrete, or is it just sitting on top of the pad?
That I couldn't tell you. I didn't walk by the site.
It looks like a pergola that you could pick up and move around. And
it absolutely could be dismantled relatively quickly, yes.
I don't know that we oversee movable structures that aren't necessarily affixed.
We do not allow for carports, but I understand where you're going with this and proceed.
I think the permitting office would consider it a permanent structure and require a footing inspection. Even from a historic zoning guideline, we would probably consider this something that is easily removable and therefore doesn't disrupt the continuity of neighborhood as severely as something more permanent, but I'll let our permitting office weigh in on that.
Yes, it would need to be inspected. It would be considered a permanent structure, and it would be considered a carport as it's used for parking of a vehicle. We wouldn't review it as anything other than a carport unless the driveway was removed, as you need a driveway to a carport.
Can the applicant tell us if this is on footer, if footers have been dug or not?
Hello. So this is a structure that is movable. It is not a permanent structure, to my knowledge. So to my knowledge, to my best knowledge, there hasn't been any footers dug in or anything. And that's about all I really know, because this was done before the owner moved in, and it was just, it was a structure that wasn't able to be moved, that was just added on to the location.
Melinda's going to weigh in for a minute about this.
The design guidelines do not address carports at all. They don't mention that word. They primarily speak to garages. So that's what the guidelines are for. There was a case last month that y'all may remember where they were doing an accessory dwelling unit. I think it was last month. And they had a carport. That one was right across the street from this property, and it did have a metal roof and wood posts. So just for context.
You're saying that there was a carport across the street from this?
I'm saying that there was a case that I believe it was 221 East Oklahoma Avenue that we heard last month, or maybe it was the month before that. It was for an accessory dwelling unit and a carport, and it was a carport similar to this one. There was another case that we heard, I believe, last November for a similar carport that was part of a larger backyard project.
So, Sean, your response to that, I know you said that the neighborhood's against that, but it sounds like there's been several before.
That's a very good point, and thank you for pointing that out. I don't have a perfect memory, but I believe for 221, that was an ADU with a carport beside it, and the neighborhood did support that, primarily as an ADU versus a freestanding carport, but that is a valid point, so I need to amend what I said earlier about not approving them in the past.
So let me get this. This is an after the fact?
Yes, this was built sometime in 2024, and they're not able to pull the permit for the shed until they get approval for this carport that was built over a year ago without a permit.
Gotcha. Okay.
This may illuminate a little bit. In my general contracting world, we've purchased buildings, like outbuildings and sheds from manufacturers like this. We may have even gotten one from Tough Shed. And the contract terms were that we were to provide a flat slab and they would deliver to that, and that they were not responsible for footings, fastening it to the ground, hold downs, wind uplift, any other engineering standards that I think our permitting office still cares about and would probably want to review this more. So I kind of defer to y'all on how you want to handle this. If you require new footers or whatever you think.
Yes, this would need to be added to the permit for the shed, and then at that point, it would need to comply with all building codes for a permanent structure, and then be properly inspected.
So would we act now, or do we need to act after you all have approved something? Or do we approve under the condition that they come to you all? What does that look like?
So there's still some issues with engineering and whether or not the location that it's currently in would be appropriate based on back out clearances and things like that. I would probably recommend that they get a little bit further on where they can actually place the structure before any kind of approval was given for this, and that they add it to the permit that they have currently pulled.
It's standard that, permits are submitted afterwards, generally speaking, and that's when they, will address any of those building code or engineering concerns. I will say we weren't aware that there might need to be some change location of the carport. So one option is to postpone it until they have some more specifics on that. Another option would be adding a condition that would allow staff to approve minor revisions to the carport placement and the parking pad placement. And, you know, if they wanted to move it, you know, to the rear of the lot, or I mean, they're going to have it close to the alley anyways. But if they wanted to do something outrageous, you know, then that would come back before the board. So y'all have either of those two options.
I feel like postponement is prudent here. Engineering needs to take time to make sure that their trash trucks can still get through the alley, and we maintain those setbacks that we need. Permitting needs to evaluate this property and see if they probably do need to put in footings, which means moving it is actually probably convenient for them. So they could pour 4 new footings, you know, 2 feet farther from the alley possibly. But I still think we need to postpone it and let these other bodies do their work. And we can still discuss the appropriateness of the structure in theory for the applicants and the owner's benefit. Personally, I tend to agree with Sean that it's not necessarily appropriate, but it's also very unoffensive and minimal, and again, easily removable. Someone walking down the alley, they're going to notice it, but it's not as obtrusive as if it was from a main right-of-way or a more permanent appearing structure with walls and such.
Do we want to entertain a motion? So we basically have 2 options that Melinda has pointed out to us. We could just postpone it, or we could approve it with the condition that they go before the proper permit and then circle back with staff.
Well, I guess I'll go ahead and put something out there. I probably would prefer a postponement, given that the neighborhood is not in support of it as well. So I'll put a motion that we postpone this for, do I need to give a reason?
For how long?
No, just for postponement.
I'll second.
Okay. Okay. We have a motion that's been properly seconded for postponement. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move. You're welcome. We're going to move to 4th and Gill. Our first property is at 410 Luttrell.
All right, our first case in 4th and Gill is for 2 door replacements on the rear elevation. 2 existing single doors will be removed, and they will be replaced with aluminum-clad wood sliding full-light doors with a 4-leaf and 2-leaf profiles on the 1st and 2nd story, respectively. Repairs to the brick foundation and the installation of some foundation drains were approved administratively on November 6th. The existing doors on the rear elevation are simple and are not original to the structure, although their location might be. Removal is appropriate. The existing openings will be widened to allow for the doors, and in-kind wood trim to the existing should be installed around the openings. The design guidelines recommend that secondary entrances be compatible with the original materials, which were typically wood. Aluminum-clad wood sliding full-light doors have been approved on a rear addition that was not visible from the street in 4th and Gill, and they have been approved within other historic zoning districts in the city. In the opinion of staff, aluminum-clad wood is an appropriate material because the doors will not be visible from the street. So with that, staff is recommending approval of Certificate 11G 25HC, subject to the condition that wood trim in kind to the existing be installed on the door openings.
Thank you. We have the applicant before us. Could you say your name and address, and then let us know if you have any comments based on the staff recommendation?
Yes, Sarah Martin, 800 Luttrell Street. And I agree with the staff recommendation about replicating the casing. The door casing will be the same profile that we have on existing openings on the back of the house, so that will match. I'll also say with regards to the aluminum clad We don't typically propose that in this neighborhood because we prefer a paintable substrate, either fiberglass clad or wood. But the reason we did propose it here is because it's a pretty big cost difference for the owner. It's a savings compared to some of the other materials, given the size of the doors. And since the much of the trim on the house is white and aluminum clad comes in several options of white, we thought it would be a good match for this particular house. Thanks.
Thank you. Is the neighborhood rep available, or did they leave any comments?
I did not receive any comments, and I don't believe they are here.
Okay. Commissioners, did you have any questions or concerns?
No, I'll make a motion to approve based on staff recommendations.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second to approve based on staff recommendation. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to 700 Morgan Street.
All right. This case is for a new single-family house that was postponed in July to allow the applicant to work with the neighborhood to introduce more architectural detail, particularly on the right elevation. The front porch design has been revised to wrap around the corner, and revisions have been made to window placements and profiles. The new house is proposed for a 54-foot wide lot in Fourth and Gill that has been vacant since at least the 1980s and historically held a rectangular 2-story frame residence with a wood exterior and a 1-story corner porch. The subject property is a corner lot, which typically necessitates additional elaboration on the side elevation. The average front setback of the block face is 16 feet, approximately 12 feet to the front porches, and the adjacent house is set 17 feet from the front property line with a corner porch that's flush with the main massing. The proposed setback measures 16 feet to the full-length porch, with the main massing set 23 feet from the front lot line. The house will be placed slightly further from the street than most of the buildings on the block, but will be generally aligned. The 10.5-foot interior side setback right here is consistent with the historic development pattern. However, most corner lots in Fourth and Gill have smaller corner side setbacks than the proposed 17.5 feet or the 12 feet required by the zoning code, and they typically range within 5 to 13 feet. The large corner side setback is driven by a slightly narrower house form. The Commission should discuss whether the front and corner side setbacks are compatible with the context. The proposed parking is a concrete pad at the rear of the lot and is accessed via the alley, which meets the guidelines. The 26-foot wide by 57.5-foot deep 2-story house is proposed for a block featuring 2-story houses in the vernacular, Queen Anne, and Craftsman styles. And the opposite side of the street features a historic brick apartment building, contemporary new construction, and a cinder block commercial building outside of the overlay. The proposed 2-story house employs the American four-square style, including typical roof forms, brick veneer cladding, and the 3-bay facade. Overall, the house's style is compatible with the context and uses contemporary materials to be sufficiently differentiated from original buildings. However, additional architectural details and elaborations may be necessary on the side and the rear elevations to align with the context. The proposed 812 pitch hipped roof with a hipped roof dormer on the facade and overhanging eaves is comparable in height and complexity to the other houses on the street. The roofing material is not specified, but appears to be asphalt shingles and should be indicated on the final drawings. The facade features a full-length wraparound 8-foot deep front porch with 8-inch square columns and will be accessed via full-length brick steps. The wraparound porch is similar to that of the previous structure on the site and provides additional interest to the right elevation. The tongue and groove flooring is appropriate, and the final drawing should include a hand railing if required by code, ideally a wood hand railing with balusters set in the top and bottom rails. The porch columns have been revised from the previous Craftsman style tapered columns with brick bases, but they are similar to the other houses on the block. The materials for the porch columns and ceilings should be included in the final drawings, and the porch columns should feature trim at the top and base as depicted. Guidelines recommend that materials for new buildings be consistent with the materials on the street. Brick cladding on the foundation is appropriate. The applicant should submit a section indicating that the foundation aligns with the face of the siding above instead of protruding outwards from the siding, with final drawings showing foundation height. The proposed siding is fiber cement lap siding with a smooth finish and 4-inch reveal, which has been approved on new construction Fourth and Gill. Different siding colors are proposed for the first and second stories, and a belt course with the same color as the window trim should be introduced to divide the stories. The proposed quarter-light craftsman-style wooden front door is appropriate. Final door selections for the full-light secondary entrances should be sent to staff for review. Guidelines recommend, quote, breaking up uninteresting box-like forms into smaller varied masses organized into bays and using a, quote, mix of wall areas with door and window elements like those found on existing buildings. The facade achieves this with its consistent bays, hipped roof dormer, and full-length front porch. Although the number of windows and their placement has been revised, the side and the rear elevations are not organized into bays that are compatible with historic forms, and the side elevations feature large swaths of blank siding. The placement of the window and secondary elevation on the right, the placement of the window and secondary entrance on the right elevation, that's right here, should be aligned. The design primarily features 3/1 double-hung fiberglass-clad wood or aluminum-clad wood windows, which are appropriate for craftsman styling. However, 6 different window sizes are proposed. The Commission should discuss the front and corner side setbacks, window placement and sizing on the side and rear elevations, and whether additional detail is necessary on the side elevations. Along with any necessary revisions or conditions, staff is recommending approval of Certificate 7G25HC, subject to the following conditions: the final site plan to meet city engineering standards, final material specifications for the roofing, secondary entrances, porch columns, and porch ceiling to be approved by staff and included in final drawings, the porch columns to feature trim at the top and base as depicted, the projecting sills trim on the windows to be retained, and the windows to use simulated divided lights, the final drawings to depict the foundation height and front steps as built, and a hand railing on the front porch if required by code to be approved by staff, the placement of the window and door on the right elevation to be aligned, and a belt course with the same color as the window trim be introduced to divide the stories.
Thank you, Melinda. Would you like to?
Zach Taylor, 12404 Hickory Creek Road. I would like to say the site plan, our surveyor and engineer is still working on that to get that correct because it doesn't have the wraparound porch. And so with those setbacks, we will have to scoot the house over to get that where the side porch goes out around 8 feet. We'll have to kind of make that up so that we're in the setback lines for building purposes. The house is going to be flipped. So the covered deck will be on the street side and not the beside the neighbors. So,
Did you have any other comments based on staff recommendation?
No, maybe just for the rear elevation, the windows. Would that be more appropriate to make those two? It's struggle with the design of that because there's a master on the main floor and a master on the top floor, and so we want to make sure that there's enough room on the walls for a bed to be put in between the windows for that. And so whether that's making the upstairs windows a double window and kind of combining those and leaving the downstairs windows separate, just to make sure that they can fit a bed on the downstairs master bedroom. So.
Just to clarify, that condition was for the right elevation, not the rear elevation. It's referring to this window and this door, so it'd just be scooting that over a little or scooting that over a little.
Okay, I thought we were talking about the rear too, but the right elevation, we'll just move the door over. That's not an issue at all. So.
Okay. Did you have any comments from?
I did not receive any, but I believe there may be somebody from the neighborhood here to speak on the case.
Okay. Mr. Applicant, you can have a seat for a second while we hear from the neighborhood or an interested party from the neighborhood.
Good day. My name's Roz Miltenberger. I'm at 815 Luttrell Street, 37917. A 30-year, resident of this neighborhood. Love it very much. Want to maintain the historical character of it while also, helping to build some infills to improve our neighborhood. But it is of utmost importance to our neighbors and the neighborhood organization of which I'm a member, to uphold our guidelines and maintain the historic nature of the neighborhood. That said, I was present with Melinda Wetzel in July when this proposal came forth originally. We have since been collaborating with Zach and his colleague Brad, who is also present here today, to help to refine this, their proposal. And Aaron, our neighborhood liaison to the board here, commission here, has also been in communication with us. I'm a little surprised that you don't have his notes, but I do have some feedback from him. I know that he's offsite at another professional endeavor that could not, that prohibited him from calling in today. So I will do my best to summarize some of his input as well as my general impressions as a neighbor. I don't know that I want to completely speak for the board on certain details, but I do know that in general, the board agrees with me on certain things. Utmost importance to us and to uphold the historic nature of the neighborhood is that our guidelines be upheld and that there be integrity from this process to the permitting process. And in the past, we know there have been some breakdowns. However, I am noticing some changes recently that are actually working towards integrating those two quite a bit, and it's good to see you here today. We have been in discussion with the mayor about some of these concerns. So to that end, having more detail on these renderings that are very pertinent and relevant, enable the permitting group to do their jobs upon inspection, that's super important to us. So I would encourage that the plans contain all the detail that is needed for that process as the commission here has requested. We're very happy that this plan has been revised to include a wraparound porch and some changes on this 4th Avenue facing side. And it seems like there are still a few more refinements that need to happen, as Zach had mentioned, on the drawings. There's inconsistencies on some of the drawings here with regard to, some of them don't have the wraparound porch. The one that the one with the surveyors details, it doesn't show the wraparound porch. These two show it. I'd say that one right there, as Zach mentioned. I would, let's get that. I would like to see that included there. But here on this one, they're pretty consistent, although the windows are different. There's a 3/1 versus 2/2. I'm not sure what you're finally proposing here, but feedback I've had from Aaron as a historical architect is that the 3/1 is more historically appropriate for Foursquare, and I would encourage that as an option. 2/2 is fine too, but if it were me, I would prefer the 3/1, and the drawing should be consistent within the application. The other concern Aaron had, which is not, I don't think is completely prescribed within our guidelines, but has to do with...
I just wanted to give you a warning, you have like less than 1 minute.
Okay.
Okay.
Color choice of the brick foundation. We'd ask that be consistent with period homes in the neighborhood, which should reflect the local red clay. And while that is not prescribed in the guidelines, we would encourage consideration along those lines. And with that, I will end my comments.
Okay, thank you so much for your comments. Commissioners, do you have any discussion? Do you have any questions for the applicants, or would someone like to make a motion?
I have a question for the applicant. Do you have a specific issue with staff recommendation number 7, adding a belt course?
No, that's not, we do that typically for, if we change sidings, and so we can do that here with no issue there. So
just a trim piece?
Yeah.
Normally, I could be wrong about this, but normally the Historic Zoning Commission doesn't prescribe color as far as, requiring it to be a certain color. I don't know if we can do that. You know, here I would
It's
think
not in the recommendations, is it? It is?
it is, yeah.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay.
It's just a very changeable feature to change paint colors. Here, I would think it would be a trim size that differentiates it from the plank siding. You know, almost like a freeze board. I don't know the architectural term. Maybe it is just a belt course trim. And similar with brick, normally we have. I feel like we have brick options are reviewed by staff. Like when you choose a brick, that's not quite the same as color. Like choosing a specific material that is within our purview. I assume you don't have any issue with that, and do you have a brick in mind?
This is what the homeowner had chosen about 6 months ago. I'm sure that they've probably forgotten what they've chosen. And so I think we can go back and kind of review that. It might, brick gets discontinued every 3 months, it seems like nowadays. So we might have to choose a new one anyway. I think that's something that we can discuss with them. It'll be, in terms of, and price, it should be around the same price as that one. So it's more of a color scheme, design, kind of detail. So I think that's pretty easily tackled for sure.
Okay. What is the foundation height that you propose?
How high was it?
If I could join the topic. I'm Brad with Red Door Homes, 115 Circle Lane. There's an elevation view. I think I saw a right side elevation view. Yes, that's fairly consistent with what will be the actuality in the field. It's going to be about 2 to 3 steps onto the front porch, 5 to 6 out of the back. So that the general elevation line is fairly consistent with how it will reveal and how the lot lays.
Thank you. You don't have a specific dimension, 5, 6 feet, 4 feet. Are you proposing a handrail for the front porch?
I think that the lot falls approximately 4 feet over the elevation distance of the home. The front porch will be within the 30-inch range, which would not require the handrails. The back, a little inset porch will be at an elevation that will require handrails. So the stairs and the banister railing along the deck will require handrail.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Yeah, commissioners, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong about the prescription of color. We certainly can't tell you what color to paint the door, even if y'all have a preference.
I would agree, because as a design element, it can be changed very easily. And so we're looking at the long term.
The design guidelines recommend that specifically that the materials used for new buildings should be consistent with existing historic building materials along the street. It's very common that when people use masonry that we do request that they send specifications for us to review, just to make sure that it's not super, super thin, to ensure that it's still going to look historic. That to some extent does give y'all purview over the type of brick to ensure that it's consistent with the street. So if in y'all's opinion, consistent with the street is going to be something more clay-based, then that could be added as a condition. But the siding color, for example, isn't really within y'all's purview.
I had another question for staff. Am I wrong? Is there a previous certificate of appropriateness for this lot? It was approved a few years ago?
Yes, I believe there was one that was issued back in 2023. And I don't think permits were ever pulled, and I think the property has changed hands since then.
What happens to that approved COA once this is approved? Is it expired once a new one replaces it?
So it will, the previous one, expires after 3 years. To my understanding, that house could still be built as long as they pulled building permits for it within that 3-year time period. I apologize, I don't remember the exact date of when that one was approved, but I do think that it would still be, I think it is still active.
Thank you.
Can you all speak to the window choice? Would you be comfortable doing the 3/1s consistently throughout the house?
speaking on behalf of the owner, they chose the 2/2, but I think they could be swayed to the 3 over clear.
And no problem consistently using that same window on each elevation?
We'll use it everywhere, absolutely. The dormer window is relatively small. You probably won't have the clear option under it. You know, that would be a more of a fixed pane. So, but I think the rendering there is fairly accurate.
If there's no more discussion, I can make a motion. I'll make a motion to approve based on staff recommendations, including number 5, that the foundation height be submitted to staff, including number 1 through 6 and 7, but excluding the color, adding trim, but color to be determined of the trim by the owner applicant as they please, and then adding condition number 8, that the brick be submitted to staff for review. And I guess another is was there a condition for the windows already? Condition number 9, to use 3/1 windows with the exception of the attic dormer. Does that align with your plan?
I think that's fine, sure.
All right.
Would the attic dormer need to be a 3 light?
I have no preference.
That would probably be the most consistent. I don't know if that's available. I would be comfortable with.
That's the thing. I
staff.
can't. I'll have to check and make sure that that's an available product. But provided that it is, absolutely. And in the event it's not, I think clear might be an alternative.
Yeah, it can be approved by staff.
Very good.
I'll second that motion, but I'd also just like to commend you guys for your collaboration with the neighborhood and for your patience. July to November, it's a long time, so thank you for your hard work. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
The neighborhood's been great to work with.
Good, but I'll second the motion.
Based on staff recommendation and several revisions and 2 additions. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll now move on to the last property in 4th and Gill, which is at 911 Eleanor.
This one has been
Postponed for next
so we don't need to do any.
Okay, so that application has actually been postponed, so we can move to our last property in Fort Sanders at 1205 Forest Avenue, and we have.
Do we not need to make a motion and vote on that postponement?
No, the applicant has.
Yeah, the applicant requested to postpone it a while ago, but because it was public noticed, we just still put it on the agenda as postponed.
All right, sorry, Madam Chair.
We'll now see the property, our last property at 1205 Forest Avenue. Commissioner Randazzo has recused herself from this particular review.
Our last case is for a new primary structure in Fort Sanders. The large 2-story house with a basement level measures 30 feet, 7 inches wide by 44 feet deep, and it features a cross gable roof and a quarter width front porch. The lot to receive new construction is a 30 to 43 foot wide by 67 to 83 foot deep vacant lot that previously featured a modified 2-story Queen Anne house. You can see that right here, built circa 1899 with a 2-story bay window projecting massing on the left of the facade, and it was a contributing resource to the Fort Sanders National Register District. The house was demolished by codes enforcement along with the historic building at 1201 Forest Avenue right here without historic zoning review after they were damaged by fire and deemed dangerous by the building official. The proposed new construction employs a contemporary interpretation of a neoclassical folk Victorian style, including typical roof forms, front porch design, 3-bay facade, and materials. Its design and scale are similar to and compatible with the previous structure and nearby historic houses. Guidelines recommend maintaining the historic facade line of the streetscape and aligning new buildings with the setbacks of pre-1940 buildings on the street. There's only one historic building on the block face, right here, which has a 12-foot front setback, and the adjacent demolished structure had a 1-foot front setback. The building will be 4 feet 10 inches from the front lot line with the front porch at 3 feet and 1 inch, but the setbacks vary due to the shape of the lot. Although the building would be slightly closer to the street than the previous structure, the proposed front setback aligns with the historic development pattern of the block face. The narrow side setbacks are consistent with the block. The proposed parking at the rear of the lot and access via the rear named alley meets guidelines for placement and size, but the angle will likely need to be flipped to meet city engineering requirements. The site plan includes native shade trees, ornamental trees, and shrubs near the foundation that are recommended by the design guidelines. There is a retaining wall along the left lot line right here and along the right lot line behind the building. That would be made from, quote, concrete. Design guidelines discourage the use of cinder block and encourage that retaining walls be made from, quote, low square cut stone, poured concrete, or brick. The retaining wall should be made from poured concrete or be finished with another recommended material. The cross gable roof features an 8/12 pitch side gable and a 17/12 pitch front gable. The form, pitch, and complexity align with the design guidelines. Guidelines recommend that new construction, quote, provide porches with proportions and materials that complement pre-1940 housing. But recommendations for porch depth and projection vary, encouraging a minimum depth of 6 feet and 8 feet. The design includes a 6-foot, 1-inch deep concrete patio that goes through half of the facade, access via steps and a small access ramp, and half of this patio is covered to create a quarter-width, 2-story front porch recessed under a side gable roof that projects from the left bay. The porch is supported by two 11-inch tapered square Tuscan order columns on each story that terminate in an architrave on the first story and a frieze on the second. The porch depth is close to the minimum recommended by the guidelines. Most of the historic houses in the area feature full-length or half-length covered front porches with supports compatible with and similar to the proposed Tuscan order columns. The board should discuss the porch depth and whether the first-story roof should be extended to cover all of the proposed patio. The proposed fiber cement clapboard-style lap siding and scallop siding with corner boards and the raised foundation clad in brick veneer meet the design guidelines for materials. Guidelines recommend that windows on new construction feature similar placement, proportions, and profiles to pre-1940 construction. The design employs 4/4 and 2/2 double-hung windows with trim and sills. The material is not specified, but no window materials are discouraged by the guidelines. In the opinion of staff, all elevations feature sufficient transparency and organized windows, although there is less transparency on the rear elevation, which will be visible from Hedge Avenue, a named alley. The quartered light paneled door and half-light paneled door in the facade are compatible with historic styles, and the access ramp leading to the primary entrance is small in scale. The full light door on the rear elevation, accessed via an access ramp, is not a historic form, but is clearly secondary in nature and is compatible with the context. The Commission should discuss the width and depth of the front porch. Staff is recommending approval of Certificate 11B 25HC subject to the following conditions. The final site plan to meet city engineering standards with minor revisions to be approved by staff. The retaining wall be made from poured concrete or to have a brick or stone finish to be approved by staff. Meeting all applicable standards of the zoning code and building codes with minor revisions to be approved by staff. Extending the first-story front porch roof to cover the edge of the concrete patio with revised drawings to be approved by staff. Retaining details as depicted, including brick veneer foundation, window trim, door trim, roof trim, core-build brackets, porch columns and architrave, and scalloped siding.
Thank you, Melinda.
Hi, I'm Steve Young. I live at 6902 Burt Newman Lane.
Matt Baumgartner, 1545 Western Ave.
Thank you. Do you all have any comments based on staff recommendation?
We are glad to accept all the conditions. I do want to say that I would prefer not to extend the the main floor porch out. I really like the way it looks now. And there are 1 or 2, 3 in the neighborhood that have something somewhat like that, but we didn't get the right picture for that.
Okay. Did we get any feedback from the neighborhood on this one? Okay, commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicants?
I had a few quick questions. First of all, I agree with the applicant. I like the porch sizing and proportion and don't favor extending it. Are you planning on putting any railing around the window wells?
The code requires that we either have a translucent cover on it, or if we're more than 30 inches to the bottom of the window well, we have to have a railing around it. And our intent is to use the translucent cover.
Okay, appreciate that. Sometimes it's difficult to find or define historic character in a new construction home, but as a Supreme Court justice once said, you know when you see it, and I see it here. And I applaud your work, and I'll support this motion.
So if you guys want to discuss it, I think the applicant and then Commissioner Tillman both brought up the porch and the revised drawings for the porch. We can discuss that and whether there's something we think has to be changed. So that is up for discussion. It's not mandatory.
Do you have a plan view of that we can see? I want to see how that roof would okay, that's good. Yeah. May we see staff recommendations again, please? Thank you. If there's no questions or discussions, I'll make a motion to approve based on staff recommendations, striking requirement number 4, extending the first story front porch roof.
I'll second.
It's been moved and properly second to accept staff recommendation with the deletion of number 4. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, that's it for our reviews. We now have other business, and we will be doing nominations of officers for next year. And I think Dallas is going to take over at this point.
Okay, so we have nominations that are going to be for chair and vice chair for the 2026 term. This is a one-year term. Commissioner Mitchell could serve another term. Commissioner, what? But not consecutively. Yeah. So it's, you can't, Commissioner Mitchell was mentioning that she had served 2 terms already, but the admin rules say 2 consecutive terms. Commissioner Tillman has already served 2 consecutive terms as vice chair, so he is ineligible for that office again. So with that, we'll open it up for nominations from the floor.
I would like to withdraw myself from any consideration of being the chair again.
If anyone has any hesitation about being the vice chair,
Yes.
they give you the full packet here. It's really nice.
I don't know if we do
Get an
the chair or
assigned
vice
seat.
chair first.
Yes, let's start with the chair.
Okay.
Who's not here?
I mean, I have nominations for both. I would like to nominate Commissioner Tillman for chair and Commissioner Hearns for vice chair.
Do you need a second on that? We do? I'll second that motion if it's okay with Commissioner Tillman.
Sounds good.
And Commissioner Hearns isn't here, so.
Do we know, is she interested and willing to do that?
I've talked to her about it before, so she's been listening and paying attention to the process. Mhm.
Anyone else? Okay, we will have elections next month.
Okay. I think that this concludes our meeting for the month. All in favor?
I also did want to mention real quick that if anyone if Commissioner Hearns changes her mind or anything, that we can still take a new nomination at the December meeting before we vote.
And with that said, meeting is now adjourned. Thank you. Thank you all.